Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. Secrets of the Mayan Calendar. The ancient Maya were astronomical geniuses. Their calendars have been baffling scientists for decades, even though they came up with them thousands of years ago. There is one particular Mayan calendar that's frustrated scientists to no end. It has 819 days on it, all written in ancient glyphic text, but researchers recently made a pretty big breakthrough. They examined the calendar from the viewpoint of 45 years. Instead of looking at it as an annual thing, they looked at it in a 45-year cycle. That was when they realized the calendar corresponds to the cycles of all the major planets. The calendar wasn't just for Earth, it was for the cosmos. This new research was recently published in the journal Ancient Mesoamerica. The results of this study show the unparalleled astronomical knowledge possessed by the Maya civilization. Co-author John H. Linden explained in his research that the Maya were experts in understanding how long it took a particular planet to orbit the sun. This might sound complicated, but it wasn't that difficult. They simply needed to watch the sky, mark where a planet was, and then mark when it returned to the exact same place. This allowed them to create a complex calendar spanning decades and accurately predicting celestial events. I'm talking about solar and lunar eclipses, Venus's solar cycle, and the motions of all other visible planets like Jupiter and Saturn. And of course, you can't forget Mars and Mercury. Researchers only unlocked the secrets of the calendar when they started analyzing planet cycles. Mercury completes 7 cycles within the 819-day calendar. Mars has a 780-day cycle that repeats precisely 21 times over a period of 16,380 days. That's 45 years, or 20 cycles of 819 days. The general consensus now is that when Mayan astronomers made their calendars, they envisioned a much larger system that tried to incorporate all the celestial objects they could see with the naked eye. Keep in mind, there are other calendars too. The Tzolk'in calendar was only 260 days and was used to understand the harvest cycle. The Hab was a 365-day calendar used for the year on planet Earth. And now for number 9. But first, it's shoutout time! I want to say a big thank you to Ralph Guzman for the super thanks. Your support means a lot, and we wouldn't be here without you. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the family and see more videos about mysterious discoveries. Number 9. Cave of Kusa. For 150 years, the Cave of Kusa was an important quarry for the Greeks living in ancient Sicily. Then, in the year 409 BC, Hannibal and his hordes of Carthaginian warriors descended on Italy, and the quarry was abandoned. The manufacturing of stone started here around the first part of the 6th century BC. The stone was used primarily to construct great temples in the nearby city of Selinunte. Hundreds of laborers extracted limestone from great pits and then transported it to the city. But when Hannibal came charging in with his armies, the Greek laborers fled. Archaeologists think they fled in the final minutes before the site was overrun. Researchers have found abandoned tools and half-carved stones, evidence that workers dropped their tools where they stood and ran for the hills. The quarry has remained untouched for 2,400 years. Nobody ever came back to keep mining, seemingly avoiding the place on purpose. There are still 60 blocks of chiseled limestone that were never claimed, and huge columns dropped on the ground, never to be delivered to their destination. But you can't really blame the workers for what happened. Hannibal took the Greek city of Selinus and slaughtered an estimated 3,000 prisoners. It was revenge for the defeat his grandfather suffered at the Battle of Himera 70 years prior. But don't worry, karma was quick acting in ancient times. Hannibal died 3 years later from the plague. Number 8. Seal of Solomon. In the Bible, King Solomon was basically a wizard. The ancient king of the Jews was said to possess supernatural powers. He had the ability to control demons, to talk to animals, and to parley with spirits. He is one of the most mysterious biblical figures and was almost definitely a real king who ruled Israel. According to legend, much of his power came from a magical seal, known as the Seal of Solomon. This mystical device allowed Solomon to summon and direct demons to do his bidding. Most mainstream historians and archaeologists have written the artifact off as nothing but a myth. and yet police in Turkey say they have just found it. According to the most recent reports coming out of Turkey, police in the Amasya province raided a real-life Indiana Jones who was in possession of a small cache of ancient artifacts. One of these artifacts was a bronze seal. The treasure thief also had 5 golden tablets, believed to be early forms of the Torah, a pair of metal tablets used for holding sacred amulets, and a mysterious golden bull figurine. Local governor Osman Varol said the artifacts are currently being examined by professionals at the Amasya Museum, who will authenticate and date them. But as far as they can tell, the seal might be the very real seal used by King Solomon 3,000 years ago. The seal was never seen as an evil object. In the Bible, King Solomon was only able to control demons because his seal was engraved with the name of God. Arabic legend says the ring was given to him from messengers in heaven. 4 angels came down from the sky and each gave him a precious jewel. King Solomon set the jewels in the seal, and suddenly he was able to control the 4 elements. But there are a lot of other legends too, each one more magical than the last. King Solomon supposedly got into a fight with a mythical beast called Asmodeus, king of the demons, who stole the ring and threw it into the sea. But it looks like he got it back. Number 7. The Mystery of the Sintamani Stone. In Buddhist literature, there is repeated mention of something called the Sintamani Stone. Nobody knows if the legendary stone is a real artifact or some vague metaphor from Buddhist philosophy. What we know for sure is that legends behind the stone are plentiful. Buddhist lore says the Sintamani stone is held by those on the path to becoming enlightened. It's often described as a luminous pearl first clutched by the hands of Buddha himself. The jewel has the ability to eliminate poverty and suffering. Some legends say it can fulfill wishes. In Vedic legends, the god Indra was the owner of the jewel but dropped it to earth during a fierce battle. Hindu tradition connects the jewel to Vishnu and Ganesha, again mentioning that any mortal who possesses the gem can accomplish all their dreams and fulfill all their wishes. Although there is no real proof the Sintamani stone ever existed, there are some rumors. Some believe it's a piece of glass that was created when a meteor crashed into Europe 15 million years ago. They think it's made out of moldavite, a stone said to increase psychic energy. The Philosopher's Stone, believed to have the ability to turn any metal into gold, is also supposedly made out of moldavite. To keep things simple, the Sintamani stone is the Buddhist version of the Philosopher's Stone. It might be a space rock with immeasurable power. It might be nothing but a story. Nicholas Roerich, the legendary Russian artist and occultist, supposedly came into possession of the treasure in the 1920s. Once he had it, Nicholas went on a journey to return it to Shambhala. Nobody knows where it is now. Nicholas apparently wasn't some crackpot either. He was close friends with Vice President Henry Wallace in the 1930s. So who knows what kinds of things he was up to. What do you think happened to the Sintamani stone? Let me know in the comments. Number 6. The Mystery of Abu Simbel. For 3,000 years, Abu Simbel sat on the edge of the Nile River just above the modern border with Sudan. It's at the very southern tip of Egypt, one of the most recognizable sites from the days of the pharaohs. Visitors flock to the ruins every single day with their cameras. But what the tourists might not know is that the current Abu Simbel is not in the right spot. In the 1960s, the whole temple complex was dismantled and then rebuilt a few yards away so that it didn't get destroyed by the newly constructed Aswan High Dam. Abu Simbel was constructed in 1244 BC. It consists of 2 megalithic temples carved into the side of an eroding mountain. The larger of the temples has 4 seated statues out front that are absolutely massive. Standing below these things, it's hard to imagine they were sculpted by human hands and not by the Egyptian gods themselves. The colossi depict Ramses II, ruler of Egypt between 1303 and 1213 BC. Each one is 69 feet tall, with the doorway between them that almost looks like a doggy door. That door, small as it may be, was put exactly where it was on purpose. On 2 days of the year, the sunlight shines directly through the doorway and lights up the inner sanctuary as if someone turned on the spotlights. When this happens, 3 statues inside the sanctuary light up brilliantly. Historians think the dates, October 22nd and February 22nd, are meant to mark the coronation and birth of the mighty pharaoh. The other temple was likely built for Queen Nefertiti. It boasts 2 statues of the queen and 4 statues of the pharaoh, each one about half the height of the statues at the larger tomb. After 3,000 years, modern progress threatened to destroy this ancient place. The construction of the dam would result in the flooding of Abu Simbel, and they would have done it too, if it weren't for dedicated archaeologists dismantling and relocating not just the statues but the temples too. Abu Simbel would currently be submerged underwater. It took nearly 5 years to complete the work, 3,000 laborers, and around $42 million. And now for number 5. But first, I want to give a big shout out to Isabella Trito and Russell Sanderson. Thanks so much for watching and supporting this channel. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 5. The Coffin Texts. The Coffin Text is not a book, but rather a series of over 1,000 spells, incantations, and religious scripts inscribed on coffins from ancient Egypt between 2134 and 2040 BC. The point of the Coffin Text was to help the recently deceased make their way through the afterlife. Egyptologist Geraldine Pinch says the Egyptians also painted maps on the floor of the coffin, which was meant to help guide the dead on their journey to eternal rest. Geraldine notes the coffin maps are some of the earliest maps made by any culture of the afterlife. The maps were illustrated guidebooks to the land of the dead. But here's the deal about the Coffin Texts. They were derived from an even earlier series of writings known as the Pyramid Texts from 2400 BC. They were also the inspiration for the legendary Book of the Dead, another series of writings that appeared around 1550 BC. Throughout all these different iterations, the source material remained relatively the same. It all had to do with navigating the world beyond death. The script merely changed from being written in pyramids to being scrawled on coffins, and finally being written on papyrus and buried with other grave goods. It all started during the age of the pyramid builders with King Sneferu around 2600 BC. He was the one who perfected the art of pyramid building. His son, King Khufu, took things to the next level with the creation of the Great Pyramid of Giza. In the centuries that followed, the rulers of Egypt had a duty to maintain the pyramids built by their predecessors. It was also part of their job to maintain the multiple burial sites like the one at Giza, Saqqara, and Abu Sir. These funerary sites were staffed by priests who performed rituals and recited spells to care for the dead. These priests were the first ones to recite the spells of the Coffin Texts. Tombs soon found themselves adorned in written spells, and then it became popular to inscribe the spells on coffins. And that's where we get the Coffin Texts, and where the spells for the Book of the Dead came from. Number 4. Neolithic stone balls. Sometime around 1860, a strange ball was found during some drainage work in the UK. The beautifully crafted ball dates back over 5,000 years to the Neolithic age. It was carved by a Stone Age human, formed out of rough black rock like a puzzle piece. It has 4 disc-like bumps, 3 carved in intricate spirals, and the 4th one is blank. But that's not even the strangest part. The Towie ball, found in Scotland, is only one example of at least 430 other objects that have been found in the British Isles. The overwhelming majority were recovered in Aberdeenshire, the same place where the Towie ball was discovered. This ball is the most famous because it's the finest example, perfectly preserved like it was made just yesterday. Not much is known about the Neolithic stone balls. They were likely crafted by early farmers, but nobody knows what they were used for. Some speculate they were ammunition for a sling weapon, used to fling at the head of your enemy. But a more realistic explanation is that these were symbols of power. They were carved with sacred symbols, the same symbols that have been found carved on the Newgrange tomb in Ireland. They were created starting about 3000 BC, with the practice continuing only for 400 years. By 2600 BC, nobody was carving weird stone balls anymore. Most of these stone balls are pretty small, smaller than a baseball, maybe about the size of a doorknob if you had to compare it to something. It's doubtful they were created using any kind of advanced technology. They were carved totally by hand, then distributed throughout Britain and Ireland. Some were made of a dark green igneous rock, and others were crafted from red sandstone. Even with over 400 of these things in museum collections across the globe, scientists still can't agree on what their purpose was. Weapons, symbols of power, or totems used in unknown rituals. What do you think they were used for? Let me know in the comments. Number 3. The Hellfire Caves. The Hellfire Caves were created in the 1700s at the order of Sir Francis Dashwood, the co-founder of the Hellfire Club. He instructed the workers to dig tunnels and adjoining chambers a quarter-mile deep into the earth directly beneath a ruined old church. The construction project was immense, especially given that it happened over 300 years ago. When it was finished, the Hellfire Caves included a banquet hall, multiple chambers, caves, passages, and at the very end, a room known only as the Inner Temple. This final chamber can only be reached after crossing over an underground river that the club members used to call the River Styx, a reference to Hades River in Greek mythology. The construction of the caves was not public knowledge at the time. Members of the Hellfire Club constructed a fake facade outside the entrance to their underground sanctuary that looked exactly like a Gothic church. They also built walls around it to make a courtyard. Anyone wandering by wouldn't think anything of it. The entrance to the caves was pretty creepy, but it was inside the walls of a Gothic church, and nobody would blink an eye. What the gentlefolk of the English countryside in West Wycombe didn't realize was that there were unholy rituals being held deep in the depths of this cave. The Hellfire Club held their meetings in the Inner Temple, but what they did down there, no one really knows. There have been a lot of rumors, but no concrete proof. Some say they were criminals, others think they were worshipping Satan, and some say they were giving sacrifices to the pagan gods of the old world. Realistically, the club likely consisted of very wealthy individuals. They met down in the dark to get drunk, share stories, mock the establishment, and indulge themselves in whatever pleasures they fancied. They may have also held mock rituals to the ancient gods, but nobody can say for sure. The Hellfire Caves opened to the public in 1951. Since they've become a tourist attraction, a lot of the mystery has been seeped out of the place. The ancient chambers are now filled with mannequins and plaques and modern amenities like lights. Would you like to visit these caves, or have you already? How was it? Let us know in the comments below. Number 2. The myth of the Aryan race. The word Aryan has some seriously negative connotations these days. Likely the first thing that comes to mind is bigots, racists, and the Nazis. But it wasn't until the Nazis got involved that the word Aryan suddenly became a thing of evil. The truth is that the word Aryan was used in ancient times as a reference to a mysterious group of people who came from prehistoric Iran. The earliest known Aryans, a very real people, migrated from Persia into northern India around 1500 BC. Those already living in India called them Arya in Sanskrit. In the Persian language, they were called Iran. Their name is the very foundation of the country called Iran. Iran literally comes from the Aryan people. The ancient settlers came through the Kush Mountains from Central Asia and settled in the Indus Valley. They were nomads, peaceful travelers who were looking for a fertile place to rest. They just so happened to arrive near the death of the Indus Valley civilization, and so they have been mistakenly attributed with hastening their decline. The truth is that the Aryans filled the gap left behind by the Indus Valley civilization as their cities were abandoned and their culture disintegrated. We still don't know why the Indus Valley people fell to the wayside. The population started to decline around 1800 BC, perhaps due to a change in the river patterns. There may have also been catastrophic flooding that forced people to flee the cities as they became cesspools of disease and starvation. Amidst the turmoil, the kingdom of Aryan rose to power. The big mystery about these people is that we know almost nothing about them. There are very few ancient sources that even reference them, none of them very accurate. Scholars don't know where the Aryan capital was or how big their kingdom may have been. Yet they do appear in Zoroastrian religion, described as a mythical people who came from a faraway land. Their homeland was said to be the center of the world, but no physical location was ever given. And there were a few other bizarre mentions of the Aryans. King Xerxes of Persia was described by historians as being from an Aryan stock. The history of the Aryan people is still a huge mystery. But it's tough to talk about them since the Nazis misappropriated the Aryans as being a superior Nordic race, which was something completely untrue. Number 1. Rituals in Bolivia. Researchers have discovered a ritual landscape in Bolivia like nothing ever seen before. In a new study published in the journal Antiquity, scientists described the discovery of 135 hilltop sites in the sacred mountains of the Bolivian highlands. At each hilltop site, the archaeological team found massive quantities of ceramic fragments. These are from about 1250 to 1600 AD. The fragments were scraps from ritual plates, bowls, and jars. These hilltop sites were called waka, ceremonial spaces that arose 800 years ago. Early Spanish chroniclers even wrote about it. One of the sites is Huasquiri, located near the border of Chile and Bolivia. It's a huge place with a perimeter ring made of 39 adjoining enclosures. Think of a large circular plaza, and all in the center, the scattered remains of broken plates and bowls. It's possible the structure here was described by Spanish priest Bartolomé Álvarez in the 1580s. According to Álvarez, he heard of a large building in the mountains where the Inca were conducting rituals. He described Huasquiri as the house and business of hell, and said the ritual attendees were in a state of drunkenness when he visited. The authors of this study say the ritual remains at Huasquiri are unlike anything else in the Andes. It may have been an important ceremonial site to perform sun rituals in June. On June 24th every year, the Inca performed Inti Raymi, a festival dedicated to Inti, god of the sun. The same festival is still happening today, though the last truly Inca celebration was in 1535, before the Spanish banned all of these practices. Thanks for watching! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and come back soon for more videos on ancient history. See you later! Bye!